I'm Kelsey Williams, and my report for American literature is on Louisa May Alcott and her short story, The Brothers. Also known as My Contraband, it was originally published in the Atlantic Monthly in 1863 under the name The Brothers. Now, Louisa May Alcott is known for writing Little Women, and a lot of generations of girls, myself included, have grown up with that story, but The Brothers isn't as well known. Louisa May Alcott started working at age 15 to support her family. She was born in Pennsylvania, Germantown, in 1832 to social reformers and abolitionists. So her household was really big on forward-thinking, progressive thinking, and they were friends with a lot of abolitionists, major people who wanted to change things. And so keep that in mind when you think about the fact that when she was writing The Brothers, she wasn't looking back at the Civil War. She was living it. Now, I want to talk about the fact that she was a nurse. In 1862, she was 30 years old. She volunteered to be a nurse in Washington, D.C. because she didn't feel like she was doing enough and just, being there to support the war effort. She wanted to actually do something. So she went to be a nurse. And the following year, she would publish both hospital sketches and The Brothers, fictionalized accounts based on her experiences nursing. Now, The Brothers deals with some very hard topics, and she wasn't afraid to tackle them at the time, which is really interesting because, especially at the time, they were taboo to discuss. They're racism, slavery, slave rape, fratricide, and the struggle in the story of identity and revenge. So the story, The Brothers, is about two half-brothers that come together and they clash in a way that seems really inevitable by their circumstances. Robert is a contraband, a term at the time that meant someone who was a slave, and then the Union came in, the Northern Army, and essentially freed them, but they were still used for labor. So it's a really loaded term because while they were technically free, they weren't equal. And her characters in The Brothers, they're really unique in that they defy the conventional roles of the era. So her nurse, Faith Dane, is likely a reflection of herself, since she was nursing during the Civil War, and certainly Louisa May Alcott is known for being demure or afraid to discuss anything. So Faith Dane is very unconventional. She's very capable, self-reliant, but she certainly does have some flaws. In one way, Faith Dane almost kind of, I want to say she objectifies Robert, the contraband in the story. She knows every detail of his behavior. She's very romantically attracted to him. She's overt about what she thinks about him. And in a way, her description kind of, it almost does dehumanize him in a way that happened a lot during that time. And that's very human, that's very honest. Now, in the book, Civil War Nurse Narratives, the author Deneen Wardrop mentions the word contraband and how it treated people of color, as Wardrop put it, like objects of exchange in the business of war. The term denotes ownership. It still reduces them from that level of the white Union soldiers because they're not like that. They're contrabands of war. So it's really interesting to think about the era she was living in and how they looked at these people. And they were very progressive, very forward-thinking, but you still use terms like contraband. So Alcott, she incorporated her own experience as a nurse, and she also mentioned something else, the assault on Fort Wagner. That she includes the assault is really important because it involved the 54th Massachusetts Regiment, which was the first all-black regiment formed by Governor John Andrew, who was an abolitionist. He opposed slavery. So he got this regiment together as soon as the Massachusetts government approved it. Now, although segregated and they were a long way from equality, it was an important step towards cementing the arguments that abolitionists like Alcott and her family made against slavery at the time. And in her story, it has Robert the contraband, his half-brother, a white soldier, and Robert's father was a slave owner, so his father owned him. And that's something you think about what that really means. And at the time, while this kind of thing is happening, she's tackling these very real discussions. Now, it's estimated that around 33,000 black men were captured, injured, or killed during the Civil War. And the 54th assaulted Fort Wagner. That's in the story. And she gives the soldier and the white Union soldier, these very real, flawed, and complicated voices, which is really important. That she tackles these openly. Alcott discusses everything that happened in such a way that, she was there nursing these soldiers, she saw it, and while very fictionalized and romanticized and flawed, the narrative is there. And so you get a look at what was happening, what people were feeling at the time. And when you read it, I'd recommend reading it for the characters and who they represent. And do you think, are they symbols? Are they caricatured? And in a way, they almost are. But they're also extremely powerful because they're seen through the eyes of someone who was living in the Civil War, who was an abolitionist, who was a social reformer, and wanted to see change. So if you have any questions, I'd love to answer them and discuss more about the brothers.